Welcome to the DJ the Money Coach Expert Interview Series. I'm Nick, and as always, I'm joined by the founder of the 7 Spheres of Money, DJ the Money Coach. How you doing today, DJ?
Hey, Nick, I'm doing great, man. It couldn't be a better day to be alive. I mean, most importantly, and I've got a great friend of mine who is the personification of leadership, is what I can say. But how you doing, Nick, out there in New Jersey? I like that hat you got on.
Thank you. Yeah. I got my team uniform on now. I'm ready. You know, you're the money coach. I'm the money player.
There we go. Well, hey, tell you what, if everybody out there don't know who I am, my name is DJ the Money Coach, and my backstory is real simple. It's just like yours. I came out of college with $40,000 worth of consumable debt. In addition to my student loans, I also had a 525 credit score. And in the process of having a 525 credit score and over $40,000 worth of consumable debt, I went and applied for my first mortgage, and I was turned down, unbeknownst to me. And I had a good professional income, but my credit was bad, and my debt to income ratio was far over the average mark. So not only did I get turned down for a mortgage, but I also got turned down for a small business loan as well as an entrepreneur. So once that all happened, Nick, and my good friend Bill, that I'm going to introduce shortly here, I decided to go back to school and read one book called Road to Wealth. And not only did I read the book, but I focused on just one chapter at the time, which was about how credit works, so that I can get right to the heart of matter and stop playing victim and became victorious, because I don't believe in victimhood in any shape, size, or form. So upon reading that one chapter about credit and a road to wealth, within 12 months, I rose my credit score to 700. And within 24 months of that, reading that chapter, I took my credit score to over 800. And that was over 15 years ago. And my credit score has never been lower than 806, 805. You know, it's been as high as 825, but most importantly, it's been that way. But that's not what I'm really happy about, what gave me the moniker DJ the Money Coach. Once I accomplished that in 2002, I actually eliminated all my consumable debt, paid off all the $40,000, the student loan, all that good stuff. And I became consumer debt free, and everything that had my name on it, I owned outright. Had the deed, the title, whatever you call it, I owned it. That gave me a sense of great freedom and opportunity that most people don't experience. Not only do I do that, but 6 years later, when I met my friend in 2008, I became financially independent. What does that mean? I had a 6-figure income that was passive, that I built through businesses, real estate, and stocks. And I also eclipsed the 7-figure net worth. But that's not what I'm most happy about. What I'm most happy about is that I, like my friend Bill, I started to teach what I learned personally. And over the past 20 years, I've sat down with 20,000 people, families, churches, businesses, schools, non-for-profits, and taught them how to become consumer debt free in America, and then help them become financially independent in a variety of shapes, sizes, and forms. And that's what I'm most happy with. And along that pathway, I ran into my good friend that's a leader. Like I said, not only the personification of leadership, but he was an author. We actually met in the National Public Speakers Association, because we both were starting to become, speakers for the first time, and we had a kinship right off the bat. So this person here, I modeled his, profession, and I modeled his character and his integrity, and I emulated the things that he had that I wanted to get better at. And then we've stayed in touch, and I've saw and seen Bill accomplish major things, head companies, head corporations, head schools, which I'm going to have him talk about. But without any further ado, I want to introduce my audience and our audience, Nick, to William Minix, known as Bill to me. And he is a phenomenal leader, a phenomenal man. And guess what? He's not the exception to the rule in our community, but he is the rule. So without further ado, I'd like to give a warm welcome to my good friend, Bill Minix. How you doing today, Bill?
Well, thank you kindly, DJ, for that really wonderful introduction. You're way too kind, and I really appreciate it. And you did not embellish our friendship one iota. It's good to be connected with you for a lifetime. And thank you for having me on your podcast.
Thank you very much, Bill. I appreciate you taking your time out of your busy day. So first and foremost, I want to congratulate you on your new position at your new role in the company that you're with. So what we generally do, Bill, we have a conversational interview. We talk about how we met, what's your backstory, and where you are, what you're happy about, and what's the impact that you make in the community. So why don't you give us a little bit of backstory on yourself and when we met, and we'll pick it up from there.
Okay, super. We're originally from Shreveport, Louisiana, little place called Cooperole. Grew up as a poor kid, went to school at Southern University down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I graduated and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army, where I stayed on active duty for 4 years as an airborne aerosol ranger. I transitioned into corporate America in April of 1990. And in April of 1990, I went to work for a great company called Abbott Laboratories in the medical sales, medical device space. Spent 14 and a half years there, 9 different jobs for Abbott, and went on to continue to work mostly in healthcare. I took a hiatus to start my own business, which was phenomenal. Nothing better. I envy you so much. And during that time, you know, got to meet a lot of incredible people like you. And at that time, you were protege to another man named George Frazier, who's an absolute guru on networking, and I learned so much from. And right in the midst of that, the recession started, and consulting's the first thing to go, as you probably very well know. And so I started to sell my book in Shreveport, and a state representative asked me to help start a charter school. And I got involved. I wrote the vision, the goals and objectives for the school. Later, they asked me to be the spokesperson for the board down in the state of Louisiana. And following that, they asked me to be the school superintendent and school leader, which I did faithfully for 18 months. Hardest work I've ever done and most rewarding. And then right now I'm a sales leader at a food safety company, helping those guys to grow in the best practices in the sales in hopes of building out another world-class learning and development and sales training team. So that's where I am today.
Oh man, I mean, Nick, I told you his resume is unparalleled to most people on the planet, yet alone in our community. So one thing he didn't throw in, he also momentarily was in a startup cell phone business as well.
Yes, I was, and it was.
Yep. So I mean, so I look at it this way as the leadership is the thing that stands out the most for me with you, Bill. And I think right now in our community specifically, we have a lack of manhood going on right now. So I would like to start out the conversation about why is leadership so important? And just so you show, I still have your book. You know, I use it and I have my children read it. And it's funny, you mentioned Dr. George Frazier in the book. You also mentioned our friend that I forgot that we even knew together, Dan Dustin, because you had Abbott in my backyard in Chicagoland. And I totally forgot that, man. Wow. So why is leadership so important? I mean, you have a military background. My family has a military background. I've never participated in the military. My dad was a Marine. My dad was also a Green Beret, but I was raised with a military structure. So why is that so important, and why is it so at a demise right now in our community and across the landscape in the United States right now?
Yeah, well, great things happen when leaders show up, Dale, and it doesn't happen by chance. It happens because ordinary people get together and decide to do something extraordinary, and they can do that routinely. And the reason why leadership is so important is because there's such a void. If you think about it, you didn't learn leadership in elementary school, middle school, high school. There were no courses coming up when we were there in college. It just hit graduate schools only 4 or 5 years ago. And so organizations make the mistake of promoting individual contributors and thinking those skills will transfer into leadership. It does not happen that way, because those people get in position, the only thing that they can diverge is do what I've always done and you're gonna be successful. And there's 16 different personalities out there. A leader must know how to cater to each and every individual. And I believe, and I've taught this and built a lot of great organizations, that there's a leader in every chair. And so if you start teaching leadership from the days of people, youth, they'll grow up knowing leadership is about service. It's not about being an authority. It's not about barking out command. It's about how well you serve the constituents that have been entrusted to you. And if people could just get that one point, people would be better, organizations would be better, communities would be better, cities and states. And God forbid our great country and nation that we serve in would be tremendously better if people really understood leadership.
And you know what? I agree with you 100%, Bill. And I have to admit that over the past 2-3 weeks, man, I have made probably a handful of mistakes. I went back and read your book just to get caught up, to refresh over the last 2 days prior to reconnecting for this interview. And I realized that I've made some mistakes in terms of do what I do and you'll have the same results versus being empathetic towards people on my team. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say my public apologies to my team for not being the best leader that I can be for them. So I'm always a person that I have no problem looking inside and making corrections on the go. And I'm always trying to get better. So as I read the 10 mistakes to avoid to being a leader in your book, I started resonating to myself. You know, Michael Jackson said, look at the man in the mirror. So talk about what are the key components to being a leader outside of what you just told us in theory, but give me some principles that we can hang our hat on. And how soon should we start teaching leadership specifically to the Black man or to the Black child or the Black adolescent male?
Yeah, you should start teaching it out of the womb, because one of the biggest sins is inconsistency. And as you develop life principles, you take those into your business, into your personal life, and your business life. So it's never too early to start teaching leadership. I'm going to digress a little bit, and I'll give you an example. About 8 or 9 months ago, I was doing a forum over at Texas Southern University. 6 people from Texas Southern, 6 from Prairie View. And I was actually come in and speak. And normally when I do a talk, I give away a little prize. And I asked 12 sophomores and juniors to simply stand up and introduce themselves and tell what they wanted to become in life. And they were hemming and hawing. And one of my mentees who was running the program, I'm so proud of him, he's followed the model of growing up not just to be successful, but being significant. He was about to get somebody to stand up, to which I said no. And I looked at my daughter, Mariana, who was 10 years old at the time. And I said, Mariana, come up here and tell these people what they're afraid of. And she came right up to the front of the room, looking around the room and pouring out this information and knowledge through a poem that she had learned, Our Deepest Fear. Now, I'll spare you the whole poem, but I'll tell you, at the end, there was a standing ovation. And then when she sat down, I said, okay, now, she set the stage. If I'm here to hire somebody to run my organization, who am I going to choose? So Dale, in life, I don't know how people get to the point where they get so beat down till they fail to be assertive. No personal initiative, no idea that they should be out front and that they should be first. And so leadership starts with the children. And you teach it, they learn that lesson, and everywhere they go, they know that their job is to serve and to serve well, and to be the voice of the voiceless, and to be able to put forth the things that are going to carry the agenda and achieve success. 10-year-old can do that. We can teach it to anybody. And she started learning a lot earlier than 10 years old.
Oh man. Hey Nick, does that sound familiar?
Yeah, it almost sounds like your example there, you know, with the 4 children that you have.
So, you know, that's funny. You know what they said, there's a saying, when you have great friends, even when you haven't seen them in a while, when you get back together, it's like you've never been apart. And so the story you just told about your beloved daughter, Mariana, is similar to what Nick has seen through my children, my 16-year-old, my 13-year-old, my 11-year-old, and my 7-year-old, because we, in the law, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, which is a book that Bill loves and talks about is the law of attraction. So that's what you just saw, Nick, and this story that encapsulated that the confidence that's been exuded and taught to his daughter from the day she came out the womb that is void in our community because we don't have real men. I'm sorry to say that, and I'm not trying to be politically correct. So after your daughter gave that amazing speech, what was the results in the audience after that?
It set the tone. And then everybody opened up and realized that their job was not to sit silent and to be insignificant, but to get from the program what they came, and their engagement was necessary part of that. It set the tone for the rest of the program.
Now, you know, that leads me to, let's juxtapose this, Bill, to black men being called aggressive and white men being called assertive. Do you think that had anything to do with it, that they were reluctant to assert themselves because their indoctrination through their educational system creates a negative connotation for them, but creates a positive connotation for their peers? What's your point about that, Bill?
No doubt about it. So the demasculation of the black male is ingrained in our society. That's why you see so few leaders and you see so many female leaders. And I love female leadership. There's nothing against them.
Right.
Talking about the injustice and the disservice and the harm that we're doing to the black male. If any of us buy into that notion that we should be feared. And that's part of the problem. When they look at us, they see fear. And so to be associated with something that you're afraid of is hard for a lot of the people who are in the majority to come to grip with. And so what I say to the black male is never not let your light shine. Don't you ever put it under a cup because somebody else is too insecure to see your success and your significance. And I say that, Nick, with a lot of allies of all racial, ethnic, religious backgrounds. And I serve in an organization now, and I'm almost ashamed to say it, it's 2020. And of course, I'm the only one on the leadership team. Been that way a lot of times, right? But when I'm there and I open my mouth, you can imagine what other people are experiencing. They don't expect it. But if I had sheltered to other people's expectation, if I had bought into the notion that somebody else had to determine my potential, if I had not known that I was already the root word of potential, and that's potent, which means powerful, when I showed up, then I could also be sidetracked by somebody else's misconception about who I am. And so, it is a very real dynamic duality that you just described. And yes, when I'm assertive, some people can be intimidated, no matter how nice I say it, no matter how well my semantics are, how politically correct my phraseology is. The fear that they have is not really of me, it's their image of who they think I am, based simply and solely on this beautiful complexion that I wear.
Man, so well eloquently said. So with that saying, how and what responsibility do you and I have? And here's the great thing about you is that you've been in the corporate structure, you've been in the military structure, you've been in the entrepreneur structure, you've been in the school system. So you've seen leadership in every phase and every aspect of most things that we're all going to go through at some point in time in our life. So that relatability makes you a Renaissance man. And I tried to become a Renaissance man, but unapologetically, Bill, I've been in the entrepreneurial segment for so long, I can't even relate to the corporate structure anymore. And what do I mean by that? Like you said, the phraseology. I know how to be diplomatic, but I can't be diplomatic when somebody's telling me something that's outright, blatantly disrespectful, disingenuous towards my race, and has nothing to do with economics that I bring to the table. And sometimes I get pushed back on that, but because I run my own deal and nobody pays my bills, I don't push back on that. So how should you help our young men overcome that hurdle that I don't have to deal with anymore, because in essence, I don't have to worry about my impact on my income going down because I speak my piece to power, if that makes sense. How can you help us relate that, and especially in the time you spent in the school system, from being spokesperson to actually running that charter, because that probably was the most significant thing that you've done, in my estimation, because you were working in our community, in your community you grew up in, and those black males were seeing a real black leader like they need to have every day in their life to espouse to be and to emulate and create significance. Because Nick's an English school teacher in high school in New Jersey, and one of the most respectful jobs because he's a unicorn. Exactly. So I know I've been elongated, but talk to that for me and speak to the relevance of how that affects us in 2020.
Will do. And first, Nick, thank you for your service in the New Jersey school system. Having a black male in the school system means a lot. And you are molding more lives than you can ever imagine. And as you grow old, you're going to see person after person come back and tell you how meaningful you are. So thank you for your service. And then, Dale, it's extremely important. And let me say this. You can say anything you want to say to people. It's all in how you say it. And when you invest time in understanding and honing your communication skill, you grow your power. If I were to ask you and your listening audience right now, name 5 to 10 characteristics about the greatest leader you know, effective communication is going to be up in the top 3 virtually every single time. And so it's good to have passion, it's good to have conviction, but if you can't say it in a way that resonates with the people, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Let's think about 44 and 45, and we'll draw that as a contrast. So now you got a brilliant, highly educated, articulate man who understands and practices diplomacy. People know he's serious when he talks, and he gets things done. And you got this billionaire reality TV show host who can't talk at a level higher than a 5th grader and keeps repeating itself about nothing, no diplomacy, nothing but division and divisiveness. So communication is important. And if you're going to grow away from just having your passion be raw, which typically can lead to physical, into understanding that you can control situations with the words you speak, then you probably will want to invest the time. And as you develop those skills, you'll start to see how much more effective you are. And at the end of the day, the end result is to be effective. That's the goal. You want to win. And the way that you win is with the way that you articulate your goal, your vision, your purpose, your meaningfulness. And if you can convey that, you can be successful.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I think that's some of the things that we were taught when we first met in the National Public Speakers Association, was how to have that effectiveness with David Newman. And sometimes, you know, it's hard to take that road. I'll be honest with you, Bill. It's hard to take that road. Sometimes it's more about winning the battle than winning the war. But right now, when the landscape is, how do we navigate those waters and, you know, win the war versus losing the battle? Or better yet, not losing at all and still remaining principled in our function and our purpose. How do we do that? Especially coming from your point of view, again, as being one of the forefront leaders and having, you know, navigated all these different industries, these different organizations, and still on top as the #1 person sought out to do these things. How do we do that?
Well, the first thing you got to do is stay focused on the purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can achieve purpose, that's the definition of power. Okay? And the purpose is to win the war. It's not to win the battles. And so make no mistake about it. There's some battles that are not worth fighting. Like engaging in the meaningless dialogue with somebody who has no purpose, who has nothing but the desire to entice you into an argument, you're wasting your time. And your focus is way too small. Dale, you and I, Nick, and people like us, we're eagles. So no time to be around pecking and scratching with the chickens and the ducks. You got to fly high, you know? And think about all the times 44 was attacked. When have you ever seen him lose his cool?
Never.
Never, ever. So people can't take your power away from you. You can give it away. And so as you train yourself to be an effective leader, one of the things you do is train never to give your power away. So people can talk loud and long all they want to. They're just going to be loud and wrong. And at the end of the day, and one of the things I learned as a military officer is, and by the way, as an officer, we had the right. We could go up one side of the soldier and come down another side of the soldier with any words as loud as we wanted to, right? And I'd watch people, whether they were non-commissioned officers or officers, that would do that. And I watched the most effective leaders, Dale, and they hardly ever spoke above their normal tone. In fact, when they wanted to make a point, the only thing that changed was the tone. Not the volume, just the tone. And I would say, wow. And so when you develop your skillfulness in talking about and communicating to people, and you can stay on point and on message and keep people focused on the purpose, you become powerful. When you get distracted and you get off kilter and you don't stay rooted in the decision-making process, which is an important component of this, well, then you lose your way and you lose your effectiveness. And so you might win an argument or you might win a battle, but you just sacrifice the war. And this moment is too great. We've never seen a time in our lifetimes or in our parents' lifetime where we had ability to enact real change. And so we must stay focused on what that real change is. And that real change is a change in equality. It's a change in police brutality. It's a change in unfair housing, unfair lending practices. I mean, we need to stay focused on what's the real change, the disparity that exists in the education system, the way that funds are dispersed so that the poor kids stay without the ability to have the same access to learning as children who are in more affluent families. We've got to stay focused on what's the real purpose and how do we enact real change. And then the communication deal is we've got to be able to have a conversation about it. And so in order to bring people a new insight, you first got to respect where they're coming from. It's called the law of reciprocal reciprocity. If you give other people credit for their intelligence, no matter how unfounded it is, they in turn will give you credit for your intelligence. And when you can have a listening that's going on, now you can have people come to new insight because they're willing to hear what you have to say. It's important.
Yeah, you're right. So let's say right now, you said a lot of important things, Bill, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Let's say you have the young black male who's 12, 13 years old, single family household, and he's got all this, energy, and he's been diagnosed, ADHD, whatever, but he's got a lot of genius going on as well. So one thing I know that we don't talk about enough is the power of mentorship and the power of apprenticeship. How do we get that child to not turn into the victim and the statistic which society wants on the large landscape? Because they know if he embodies and knows thyself, he will be able to accomplish anything, and that will take away from the scarcity mentality that we've been taught in the hood. How do we speak to that, and how do we get that kid into that mentor apprenticeship pathway so that he can become successful and let his light shine to have significance over a lifetime? How do we begin there?
Well, we begin one person at a time, going out and teaching other people who can teach other people who can teach other people, and illustrating that success. And exposure is a very important piece of that. Just because that one child is growing up in a single family home and his environment is not what he hopes to become, he doesn't have to stay there. And bringing in people who came from that environment. and letting him talk to him and letting him see what he can become reestablishes his whole roadmap for what success looks like in his life. And I'll give you an example. As principal of leadership school, I invited a clinician from Louisiana State University Hospital to come to my school and speak. He was an African-American man who turns out to have been my fraternity brother, a good Omega man. I didn't know that before he came to my school, and I talked to him in the office. And when he got in, he started to derobe. And then he said, when I was in the 6th grade, I was in special ed. He was pronounced ADD and placed in the special ed. This is the lead clinician at Louisiana State University Medical. He's the lead doctor, okay? And so for a kid to see in the 6th grade that it doesn't matter what people are labeling you right now, what people are saying about you, you can really become the best of anything that you're naturally gifted and talented at. That exposure matters. That's why we got to take all of these men who have achieved some sense of accomplishment in life and put them back in the lives of these Black boys so that they can see who they can become. It makes a difference. Exposure reestablishes the mindset. And by the way, leadership is a mindset. It's also a skill that can be learned, and it's one that transcends all of the functional areas. So you spoke earlier about manhood. That's one of the callings of manhood, is to be responsible and accountable, not just for yourself, but for others in your community, uplift and make everybody better.
So in that regard, one thing that came to my mind, Bill, when you were talking about the tone of your voice and not raising it, Tony Dungy came immediately to my mind. Soft-spoken, strong warrior across the landscape with everybody and gets things done. So how do I help that 12, 13-year-old who's being bombarded with social media to get away from that distraction? But that's the only thing he knows. So how do we get him to get disconnected or unplugged from social media and all the negativity to get in-plugged to the people we're looking at? And what's our role, you, me, Nick, in that process that we have to get back our talent, our treasures, and our time? I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, when we met, I was doing stuff in the Title I schools, and I was serving my time. I was giving my money. I only had one child at the time. But I got to the point where I got frustrated where I'd spend thousands of dollars and 20, 30 hours a week working with single parent households, and I'd go in their house and they got 7, 8 pairs of Jordans, but they can't find $39 to come for a weekend trip, but they want us to pay for everything and do everything for them. So I got kind of frustrated with that, to be honest with you, Bill. And then after a couple of years, I said, hey, you know what? That's not my problem anymore. I need to focus on raising my own family. And I know that's not right, but that's the route I took for a few years. So how do we do it now when that wasn't even prevalent back then? There was no social media when you and I met. It was the starting of Twitter. It was the starting of Facebook, but it was nowhere in comparison to where it is now. And the negativity is off the charts now. So how do we help that 12-year-old unplug and unplug? And what's our responsibility to get back in and help fight that good fight?
Yeah, well, the way you help them unplug is the model of success that you want them to grow into. You know, there's a poem that says, I'd rather see a sermon than to hear one any day. You know, so just being in his environment and letting him see you and letting him see you be the best, most professional you that you can possibly be is a lesson in and of itself. If you're away from him, you never get to influence him like that. Close to him, then you get a chance. And you get a chance to have a conversation. And whether it's my family or other people that I'm out and around with, I've always learned to do this. I wait until people ask me for my opinion. That's when they're ready to hear. And so if you just put the kids in a position, whether you're taking them to a movie or to the ballpark or to your backyard to play, particularly now in a time of social distancing, when they come and ask you a question, now's your moment. And then some other things you could do is the modeling doesn't need to necessarily just happen with the kids. It happens with the adults too. You know, when I was a school leader at Lanier Leadership Academy in Shreveport, Louisiana, one of the things that I did, the first thing was I told my teachers, we don't talk to our children around here like they're going to jail. We talk to our children like they're going to college. And I had some senior old folks, I won't call them old folks, some more mature teachers that thought the only way they could reach the kids was to yell. And you guys hear I talk. I don't hardly ever talk above this, even when I'm passionate. But I did a DJ, and I went in a staff meeting late one day. I had my operations officer go in. And then that DJ, I went in and I said, and I hope this doesn't bother your speakers or your listening audience, I said, sit down, be quiet, shut up. How does that feel? Oh, Principal Minix, that doesn't feel so good. Well, you're right. And it doesn't feel good when you're talking that way to a child either. Disrespect only breeds disrespect. If you want respect of children or any other human being, you have to be respectful. And as a principal, even if I was expelling children from the school, we talk like this. 90% of the time when they came to my office, you know, I asked them the question, what happened? 90% of the time they could tell you everything they did, why it was wrong, and why they're not gonna do it again. And then I would say, okay, because you know I'm counting on you, you're gonna be a leader. And you said it best. 5 to 10% of the time, I had to be a little bit more involved, but the majority of the time, you don't have to ever change the way that you communicate. You can be powerful in your normal voice. And you want to model for children that to get your point across, you don't have to be disrespectful. You just have to say what your agenda is and let other people say what theirs is. So you practice facilitating and modeling what success looks like and what you want the kids to grow into. They'll be learning while they observe it. Even when you don't think they're learning, kids being in your presence, you know, they're getting a dissertation on how to live their life.
You know, that kind of reminds me of what you talk about and why managers fail and your 10 mistakes to avoid managing people. You said it's not how much you know, but how much you care about people. And that just has been on display with the example you just gave us. It was about how you cared about them and you spoke up. You spoke up to where you expect them to go versus speaking down to where they thought there was no future. And so I see that all the time. People always raise up to your expectations and they always lower to your, you know, less expectations of them. So that's one of the things that I think encompasses leadership. And then it helps me segue into, you know, financial independence, because you can accomplish the things that you've accomplished over your, you know, career in the past 12 years that you and I have known each other without having some semblance of financial independence. So speak to me about how important financial independence is and how important it is to not be encumbered by debt, especially as a black male and a black female going through this society currently.
Yeah, it's extremely important. And I'm fortunate in life. I got hooked up with some financial gurus, one that goes by the name of DJ. And this whole notion of creating real wealth resonated with me at an early age. And I actually took a couple of years off where I didn't work at all. Didn't change my lifestyle at all. I went and visited some other countries, did all of my favorite things like skiing and golf trips and that sort of thing. And had not I made good sound investments early in life, I never would have been able to do that. You know, and although I'm working now, a lot of people not because of COVID. And, you know, I know you tell people that they should always be in a position where they could go 3 to 6 months and pay their bills if they're out of a job. And of course, in an ideal situation, you wish they'd be in a position where they could go even longer. And so having that wealth building and creation puts you in a position where you can make choices that otherwise you won't be able to make. It's extremely important. And if you want to help some other people, it's really hard to be able to help other people when you can't help yourself. You know, so being in a situation where you can help people, and most of the time help involves some money, regardless of what the help is. If somebody has mental health, they don't have health insurance, you know, you help them by getting them insurance so that they can get care. So it's extremely important. And it's important for us to break all of these old habits that we have about not knowing the importance of money and significance and how to pass it down generation to bit generation. And I know that you and your other podcasts talk about all the different ways to do that. So I won't venture into your world, hopefully in there. But I will say it's extremely important.
You know, and speaking to that, Bill, today, what are some of the skill sets that our children need to have? Nick and I just had the pleasure of being the keynote speaker for what's called the, remind me, Nick, I speak so many times and apologize to my audience, but it was the
Summer Youth Employment Program.
Summer Youth Employment Program for Newark, right? The city of Newark, right?
Right.
So we spoke, Bill, and we talked about transformational skills in a digital world, and the fact that now that Google, Facebook, Yahoo, you don't have to have a college degree anymore to work for these, you know, prestigious companies nowadays. You just have to have skills. Can you speak to us in reference to how important those skills are today versus just a general college education? I'm not against college education, but I'm against miseducation for the sake of getting a sheep's cloth. I believe about getting skills, if it's through college, vocational, or through just self-learning, that you can actually take care of yourself and take care of your family. How important is that now, specifically in today's world with millennials who are short attention spans but have incredible gifts that translate in the digital world? How important is that, Bill?
It's extremely important. And what people have to do, I think the biggest skill that we could be teaching young people is decision making. Yeah, so you have to decide now what you will do and what you won't do, because your decision, Dale, determines the direction you're gonna go, and your direction determines your destiny. And you can decide to take a high road, it takes you to high places. You can decide to take a low road, it takes you to low places. And so decision making is important. Even more important than that is having a foundation, a principle base that helps guide your decision making. And so as you're talking to young people, the first thing you do is you give them some fundamental things that they can live by for the rest of their life. And you make sure that they hold themselves accountable for it. Like one of the things that I hold the young children that I talk to accountable for is your decision making. Well, let's talk about it. Here's some of the choices you're gonna have. And I do it always age appropriate, but they're gonna be introduced at some point to alcohol, they're gonna be introduced to drugs, they're gonna be introduced to gambling, they'll be introduced to the opposite sex and pleasures. They're gonna be introduced to all of those things. So what are they gonna say yes to and what are they gonna say no to and why? And then what's the consequences if you say yes or no to one of these things? So you help carve their mind and help them to think so that they can decide when they get to the point of decision what they're gonna say yes or no to. And not just for young folks. You know, I've seen so many talented African-American and other men come into corporate America, and no matter how many times I tell particular African-American males, hey, here's the roadmap. You can't do these two things. Misappropriation of funds, inappropriate relationship with women. Both of those are gonna get your black butt fired, okay? Yeah, and even the illusion of it calls into question. You can't do those two things. And a lot of people learn that lesson well. Those two things will never get people in a corporate environment. A lot of people don't learn those lessons. Well, they do. They learn them the hard way. So talking to people, giving them a principle foundation. And by the way, everything I do is predicated on the word of God. God says it, I do it. If he said don't do it, I make my best effort not to do it. Now, when I'm in an environment, I take his words, biblical, spiritual words, and I put them in a layman's term. And so when you read my book, I got to get you a book. Leadership, Why Managers Fail.
Love it, love it. You see that, Nick?
God, we're giving thanks to God, and it ends with the notion that God alone is sovereign. His way is perfect. His word is flawless. It's the absolute authority for my life. And of course, in a layman's environment, I can talk about biblical principles in layman's words. So it's the same principles that govern the way that you're going to do the only three things that you can control. And that's how you choose to think, how you act, and how you behave. Those three things you're always in charge of, regardless of what's going on in your environment. And if you know now what you're going to do because it's been built, or say, because it's been built on a solid foundation, then you'll do it consistently and you'll do it well. And other people will recognize something different about DJ. There's something different about Nick. Can't quite put my hands on it, but it's in the air. It's radiant. And I want to be more like that. You're modeling what you want other people to grow into.
Now, I want to play devil's advocate because right now our people are watching this and they're saying, you know, of course you can say that because you're polished and you've been honing these skills and mastering these principles for, you know, decades. So I got a two-part question. What was Bill Minix like when he was in high school? What was the Bill Minix like in 8th grade? And then what was the seminal moment that made you change and get on the pathway to become the polished Bill Minix that we see right now? Because I can tell you me, I was super smart, out of control, mad most of the time when I was in 8th grade, freshman year in high school, sophomore year in high school, because I was a product of, you know, 3 divorces, and I didn't have my dad in my life hardly at all because of the situation that I had no control on. So I took that out on society, and I took it out on any people I could. It was about kill or be killed. And then, you know, I grew up on the right side of the track, and then I found myself in conflict trying to, you know, play this part that I wasn't, you know, try to be this Bill Cosby, you know, figure in the corporate environment, but that just wasn't me. I had to find my way. And thank goodness, you know, I found my way. I came back to God. I found some leaders that when I, you know, partied my way out of my first college and told me I had all this talent and directed, and I saw strong black men that were invested in me, and they had no reason to be invested in me. And that paved the road for me to become successful. So what was, you know, Bill Minix like in freshman high school, 8th grade, and now we see this polished one, so that people can have some inspiration that I can't be perfect like DJ and Bill Minix right now, even though we're not, but give them some hope to give them an insight of what that looked like back then.
Sure. Well, I told you at the beginning of your show, you know, I grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana, a subdivision called Cooper Road. When you think of Black Wall Street, when you think of Rosewood, it was an all African-American community. And that's where I grew up. If you were to go and visit Shreveport and they were to tell you the places not to go, that would be one of the top 2 places they would tell you not to go.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So that's the environment I grew up in, and I'm so glad that I did. Growing up as a poor kid, great family love and good family values, but all of the struggles of any other poor kid with all the opportunities to make decisions, you know, and I made some good decisions and I made some poor choices, you know, and I'm just grateful that I never made any that I couldn't recover from. So early on, like most people around middle school, I was just trying to find my way, you know, trying to see what my sense of identity was. Most of the time I found it in athletics. I was a really good football player. And in the 9th grade, you know, I was doing everything right. Most valuable player on defense on the football team, most valuable cadet in ROTC in school, everything right. In the 10th grade, too small to be a starter on the team, although I was there, too insignificant, I lost my right mind. Started dressing crazy, hanging out with people I would normally hang out with, going and doing some things that are totally out of character. And if it would not been for some of my teachers and some of my friends who realized how out of character that was for me, it could have become my new character. That's why intervention is so important. You can change people's lives when you step in with just the words you speak and let them know this is not for you. You're going somewhere. And I got back on track. Junior year, junior class president. Senior year, I was the quarterback of the football team in my high school's first all-district quarterback. We just celebrated 40 years of our first district championship. When we got to school, my little boy, friends of mine who ball together, coming up, Flea, Junkyard Tick, we changed the culture of a school and changed the culture of a community. That's another thing. You can lead from anywhere in the organization, anywhere in the community, you can lead from anywhere. And you don't have to wait for somebody to tell you that you are a leader. Everything you need to do is already inside of you. Nobody else has to validate, the great gifts and talents that you're endowed with by your creator. So start right there. And so after high school, it was pretty clear. One of my natural gifts was leadership. I went on to do that in the United States military. As an officer, I maxed out all of my officer efficiency reports, nothing but 1 block. I attended all of the schools that I could, airborne school, ranger school, nuclear biological chemical school, had a really good foundation of a career as a very successful officer. And then I did a DJ. I like controlling my own destiny. And that structure and organization, I took it to corporate America because I figured, rather than being promoted, every couple of years with other people, I can move fast. I always have, I always will. Right? So I didn't get into that false sense of security about being in the military. You're always going to have a job, a good job, and that sort of thing. So an awesome career. I loved it. It helped to solidify a lot of my concepts of leaderships and a lot of things I took into corporate America. But that's how this little kid, poor kid, happened to make his way out. I do want to go back to 9th grade and tell a story.
Sure.
Because I wasn't labeled one of the real smart kids, so I didn't have the honors classes. And there was a man, his name is Mr. Carley, Mr. Rudy Carley, in General Motors, that talked to the juniors, the freshmen and sophomores, because he wanted to pour into them. He put some juniors and seniors over there because, they were doing the food. And when he finished, I marched right to the office because he said how the system is failing. And I talked to my counselor. I was in General Motors. I had ROTC. I had a gym class. And I had art appreciation, a basic reading and a basic math. And I told my counselor in 9th grade, I want to go to college, and this is not getting me ready. And she said, it's very nice, lady. It's admirable, but the juniors and seniors need those courses to graduate. So had it not been for Upward Bound at Southern University and their program that took in students like me, I would not have been adequately prepared to go to a 4-year college or university. So pouring into people, guiding them, telling them where they can go to get, even if they're not getting in the schools that they're in, it should be no excuse. It's enough of us to go back and to pour into people and make a difference in people's lives. And I'm a living witness. The children will listen, show them the way. Your job is to show them the way. So be involved.
Oh man, that is awesome. I know we stretched for time because I had technical difficulties getting on and off, and I'm not going to use the precious time that you bestowed upon us as the gift. So what I want to do is wrap this up. So what are some of the books that you're reading that person in elementary school, a person in high school, a person in college, and somebody that's you know, a seasoned professional like us, what are some of the books, starting with your book first and foremost, which I'm going to highly recommend. I want you to give everybody information on how to get this awesome book that you wrote back in 2008. But what are one or two books, Bill, that you would recommend for the youngster, the high school person, the college, and the seasoned professional that they should read and adhere to? Because I believe books opens up everything for everybody all the time.
Yeah, somebody once asked me what was my favorite book, and I had to ponder that for a while. And then it dawned on me, all of the favorite books that I'm going to talk about and recommend that people read, they all had the same common basis. And so the first book that I recommend that people read would be the Holy Bible. Yeah, and if you want a good place to get started in the book of Proverbs. It gives you biblical wisdom about everyday living and those good everyday decision making and choices. Most of them are short, you know, and they're powerful and impactful. That's a good place to get started. Of course, leadership, why managers fail, you can get it from Amazon. Go to Amazon.com, click on, you'll be able to get the book there. Or you can go to my website at www.allstarwise.com. I'll send it to you. Or write me at Minix, M-I-N-I-X, at allstarwise.com, and I'll make sure you get a copy. Some other books, and you mentioned a couple. I'm a John Maxwell fan, you know, and so you mentioned the 21 Irrefutable Laws. There's a lot of John Maxwell books that I like. Rick Warren's The Purpose-Driven Life. God bless his soul, may he rest in peace. Dr. Miles, the late Dr.
Yeah,
Miles,
knew him personally. Dr. Miles Monroe, met him through George Fraser.
Readings that I've ever had, inspiring beyond words and imagination, and a chapter two, and you're just compelled to go and do something different and be a better you. So those are a few books that I would recommend that people would get started with. They all are predicated on a very solid foundation and help give you good principles. And it helps to do something innately that this country needs right now. It helps teach you how to unite, how to bring people together, how to rally around a common cause, how to do the thing that you're purposed to do in life, you know? And that's the thing that a lot of people struggle with. And if they don't get that piece right, and I'm glad you did, you found your way, you knew it was entrepreneurship. A lot of people never do. And they try to follow a track of their parent or favorite cousin in the law school, in the medical school, in the engineering, in the police force, in the teaching, when that's really not what they were made to do. You know, and so if they invest some time in self-awareness and learning, what are your natural tendencies? If they stop and ask, what do people say I do good all of the time? That's what you were born to do, all right? Bird never had to go to flight school. Swim lessons. What you were born to do is already inside you. Find that thing that makes you feel good, that you do well, and that's how you're supposed to earn your living.
Oh man, that is powerful. And with that said, I'm gonna ask Nick, what's his take back from that, and then we're gonna wrap this thing up in the next 90 seconds, because that's a drop the mic moment right there, Bill.
yeah, that's right.
So Nick, man, I know my good friend Bill has dropped a lot of nuggets, and you as an educator of men and women in our community, what do you take from this as an educator, Nick?
Absolutely. Well, before I even go into the takeaways, just how Bill thanked me, I want to thank Bill for being a servant in his community. And I'll just hit the bullet points, man. Being focused on your purpose, exposure, teaching decision making, changing lives with intervention, financial independence, respect, modeling success, servanthood, and letting your light shine regardless of others' insecurities. And the thing that I liked about all of those topics is that they all went back to the original conversation, or rather the overarching theme of this conversation, which was leadership and manhood. So thank you again, Bill, for joining us and sharing all of these gems and lessons. And we're excited to see what you have in store for the future.
Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Dale.
You know what, Bill, if you could just leave with us again, your contact information, where we can get your book at, and what are you excited about for the future? Because like I said at the beginning of this conversation, we don't ever play victimhood no matter what's going on in society. It's a seminal time in our life that probably never going to happen again. These probably happen once or twice in a lifetime. But we always got to look to the sky to be victorious. I have a saying that I teach my children, Veni Vidi Vici. In Latin, it means I came, I saw, I conquered. And at the end of the day, I want to do it legally, ethically, and morally sound. And I want to do it from a biblical perspective. So, Bill, what are you excited about? And give us your parting shots, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. And thank you for your time, my friend.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm excited about this moment of change. You know, in order for something to really happen, typically something drastic or catastrophic has to happen. And I had the good fortune of spending time with Mr. George Floyd's family. They did the funeral here in Houston and got to know some of his cousins and relatives and people like Christopher Simmons, who's now devoted his life to being a public servant up in the state of North Carolina. And what I'd like to say is, let's not lose sight of this moment. It's more ripe for change now than it ever has been. And let's not lie dormant. You know, everybody has a role to play, and the first role is to get out and vote. Early voting right now, and a runoff election is taking place here. November is going to be critical. Never miss another voting opportunity, because that's the first place you can go and make a real difference. And if you make that difference at the polls, remember, all 50 states are sovereign. That means the laws are not the same in any two states. When you have people in political position, they can change laws. They can vote all folks who are of color go to school for free, any institution of higher learning. They can vote reparations, and I don't mean 40 acres and a mule. I mean something that's relevant to what we want to do and achieve now. They can vote no chokehold. They can vote out, stand your ground. You know, you have an opportunity to make a real difference now, and every vote counts. So don't lose sight of this moment, and don't lose that passion that's fueling your desire for change. Keep it up and make sure that change happens. There's a leader in every chair. Everybody is endowed with a creator with the ability to do something absolutely significant. Stop letting people tell you that you're less than. Believe your own hype. Believe the word. You were created in his image. He create, you create. That's what you were made to do. And Dale, people can visit my website at www.allstarwise.com. Nick's probably gonna laugh, because I probably don't have to say www anymore. AllStarWise.com. That's one word, AllStarWise.com. You can also write me at Minix, M-I-N-I-X, at AllStarWise.com. Gentlemen, I thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you. And Dale, you know I'm a fan. I'm a fan for life, and thanks for staying connected with my friend. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Bill. I appreciate it too. And as always, we end this the same way, Bill. We have a saying: we want everybody to have a pom-pom lifestyle. That's plenty of money, peace of mind, and we want everybody to come join us on the beaches of the World Club, because you deserve it, we deserve it, unapologetically. And again, it's my blessing and privilege to reconnect with you, Brother Bill, and I'll see you soon. And ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls, share, like, and subscribe. This has been a sermon that you got to incorporate into your life. Thank you. God bless. Peace.